Yeah.
Oh, I heard 1812.
No, that's what I said, because I was wrong.
No, you were thinking about that war, you weren't wrong.
Yeah, I'm always thinking about the 1812 war. I wake up in the morning, I say 1812 war, made the ani lefanecha. That's basically what happens.
Then you put on the 1812.
That's because I go to sleep reading about it. I read about the 1812 war and then I wake up thinking about it. So.
But then you turn on the 1812 overture.
Right, that's right. Da, 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 da. That's right. Isn't that it? Is that it? No, that's Beethoven.
Dun, 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 dun.
Okay, doc. I mean, I think I'm going to take Victoria over that.
Okay, I'll be quiet.
Okay, we have a Sichas to finish. Yeah. The fact that the Rebbe's gone back to explaining the idea that came up earlier in the Sicha, but the union of Mashiach and Shaliach, Shlach na biyad tishlach, send the one that you're going to send. In other words, that Mashiach is really a Shaliach, right? And the Rebbe also mentioned that that's the union of a Shaliach being Mashiach being a shaliach who uses all eser koiches and nefesh to be pale his shlichus, that every person in the world is a shaliach to bring about the yichud of man ban, which is the union of shaliach. So I think we made it to Yud Gimmel. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay.
We're
Right. So we can finish the Maimer, the Sicha relatively quickly. It's one page. If we have time, we'll start a new one. I'll go make copies. We'll start what we're going to do next. Mizeh ba'hara. From all of this that we've learned comes the Hara, page 298. But fail, in actuality, sheyesh lahoitzi ba'emdeinu ato, the Hara that should come out of the fact that we're standing now bascholod upsicha at the beginning and the opening shalkinas shluchim eilomi of the International Conference of Shluchim. L'chol resh tzarech lotzes bachroza u'baheidah. First and foremost, there has to be a pronouncement and an announcement. L'kol hashluchim, to all of the shluchim. She'avedus hashlichus achshav, that the avedus hashlicha of shlichus of now, shall kol Yehudi, and of every single Jew, meaning specifically the shluchim, but every Jew, because as we learned in the Sicha very, very clearly, every Jew is a shaliach. Shall kol Yehudi, of every Jew misbates bezer is expressed in this yekablu es b'nei Mashiach tzidkenu, the acceptance of Mashiach. Kloimar, kol hapratim, all of the different details, b'avedus hashlichus, of the Aveda of Shlichus, of hafatzas Torah, of teaching Torah v'yadus, the hafatzas Mayanot chutz, and teaching Chassidus, and spreading Yiddishkeit, tzrichim liyos chadurim b'nekuda zeh, have to be penetrated with this nekuda. Keitzad zeh meilich l'kabolas b'nei Mashiach tzidkenu. How does this help bring to the acceptance of Mashiach? One of the ways that the Shluchim talked about in terms of how to express this, because what the Rebbe said at the very beginning of the Sicha, that they're going to sit down and discuss how to bring this about. One of the things was that with Mivtzat Tefillin, that when a person puts tefillin on a person mentions to them, in addition to putting on tefillin, how putting on tefillin helps bring Mashiach. You're helping to bring Mashiach. Put that muda'ut in their head, right? Because now, when you're putting tefillin on someone, what's the idea? Obviously, it's the idea they should do a mitzvah, but what the Rebbe just say? That every single act of shlichus has to also be an expression of the union of Kabbalah's B'nai Mashiach Tzidkenu. Kamudgash B'nai Sekinas, as is emphasized in the subject of the kinas. Every kinas has its name and sort of one particular theme. I think theme is probably a better word as to what the kinas is going to focus on. So the kinas in this year, with that year in Nun Beis, what was the kinas? Kol yemei chayecha lahavi l'meisa Mashiach. All the days of your life, lahavi, to bring l'meisa Mashiach. Now that, of course, is a drasha that we see in the Haggadah, right, relative to Kriya Shema, right, that. Relative to Zeich Yetzias Mitzrayim, that you're supposed to remember Yetzias Mitzrayim, and it doesn't say Yemei Chayecha, it says Kol Yemei Chayecha. So Chazal learn Kol Yemei Chayecha Lahavi Es Alaylos, to include night, right? That's why we said the third paragraph of Kriya Shema at night, right? Because it's Sichas and Yetzias Mitzrayim. So if we don't have to say Yetzias Mitzrayim at night, there's no reason to say the third paragraph at night, because Sichas aren't Chaye. So that's the first drasha, and then the second drasha is there's a machlokes chazal. The second drasha is Yemei Chayecha Elam Hazeh Kol Yemei Chayecha Lahavi L'Yemei Mashiach. Now, simple pshat would be to include Yemei Mashiach, but the Frierdiker Rebbe points this out, and the Rebbe talks about it a lot. That it doesn't say, generally it'll say l'rabbeis, to include, to add, right? Why does it say lahavi, to bring? Right, which in simple pshat means the same thing, but if you read the words simply, what do the words mean? So again, it's a drasha chazal explaining that the words v'chol yemei chayecha, not just yemei chayecha, v'chol yemei chayecha, includes talking about Yetzias Mitzrayim even at the time of Yemei Mashiach. Because you might say, well, Yetzias Mitzrayim is a bottle, because obviously the coming of Mashiach is much greater than Yetzias Mitzrayim. Okay, no, we're supposed to mention Yetzias Mitzrayim even in the days of Mashiach. But the Frierdiker Rebbe points out, and the Rebbe again quotes this often, that what's the simple pshat in the words? Kol yemei chayecha lahavi l'meis Mashiach. All the days of your life are to bring to Mashiach. Meaning, if you don't read it as a drasha, you just read it as a sentence. What does it say? All the days of your life are to bring Mashiach. That's what's your life about. All the days of your life are to bring Mashiach. Right? So the Frierdiker Rebbe used to read it that way. And the Rebbe does that very, 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 very often. Kol inyane aveda, all aspects of aveda, b'chol yemei chayecha, all the days of your life, b'chol yom atzmei, and in each day itself, b'chol pratei v'shasuyim, all of the details and the hours of the day, tzrichim liyos chadurim, have to be penetrated with lahavi yemei Mashiach, to bring Mashiach. That has to be what a person thinks about. Loirak l'rabbeis, right, which is the normal language of a medrash, that it'll say Yemei Chayecha Elam Hazeh Kol Yemei Chayecha l'rabbeis, to include, to add Yemei Mashiach. It's not, it doesn't say l'rabbeis, it says lahavi, to bring. Leirak l'rabbeis, right, to increase the expression of this halacha. Kafi shekotza b'kama makemis, as is written in a number of places. Shehu hashaliach oimed mechake, that he, the shaliach, which is every single yid, stands mechake and is waiting shemashiach yavai, when that Mashiach should come. Va'az hu yitel chelik b'zeh, then he'll take part in this. Ve'yehanem ezen, he'll benefit from this. El lahavi, to bring. Hu oisa kol talui bei, he's doing everything that's dependent on him. Kedei lahavi l'meis Mashiach, in order to bring to the days of Mashiach. Lashon rabim. Loi rak. Not only aschola shel yom echad, not only the beginning of one day, ela shel yemes, the days lashon rabim, yemes Mashiach, the days of Mashiach, meaning that whole period. Lo yirak kasher Mashiach hu bechezkes Mashiach, not only when Mashiach is bechezkes Mashiach, as the Rambam talks about, different points in the revelation of Mashiach, when Mashiach is bechezkes Mashiach, but hasn't yet become Mashiach Vada. He has the status as Mashiach, and one can relate to him as Mashiach, but he isn't definitely Mashiach yet. Right? When does he become definitely Mashiach? Ultimately, when he builds the base of Mikdash. Yemei Mashiach, lo yirak kasher Mashiach hu bechezkes Mashiach, ela kol yemei Mashiach, all the days of Mashiach, gam hashleimus shel Mashiach Vada, even the completion of the notion of Mashiach Vada in this footnote 81, which takes you back to the Rambam. V'kavona b'pashtusu, the intention simply is, shemikinas hashluchim, from this kinas hashluchim, tzrichos lovei, must come, ulahavi, and bring, hachlotas tevis, positive resolutions, ketzad kol shaliach, how every shaliach, tzarich liskeinin ba'atzmei, can prepare himself, ulahachim, and to prepare as kol hayehudim b'mkeimei, u'be'irei, all the Jews in his place and in his city, l'kabalas b'nei Mashiach tzidkenu, to accept Mashiach. Al yedei shehu masber es inyonei shel Mashiach, by virtue of the fact that he explains different aspects of Mashiach, k'mavur b'Torah shebechsav, as it's written in Torah shebechsav, u'b'shebal peh, and in Torah shebal peh, psukim and nach, not so much in Torah. There's one pasuk in the Torah that mentions the idea of Yaveh Shilei, but a lot of mention of Mashiach obviously in nach, and a tremendous amount in Torah shebal peh. U'ba'efen ha'miskabel, one it's interesting because the first time the Rebbe mentioned the idea of learning in Yana Mashiach was Parshas Tazriyah Metzora in Tavshin Nun Aleph, and the Rebbe said a list of things that people could learn, and one of the things the Rebbe said, which was very unusual, and the Rebbe said, "Lekutei Sichas minasi dareinu." Lekutei Sichas of the Rebbe of our generation. Now, who's Nasi Dareinu generally? When the Rebbe says Nasi Dareinu, who's he referring to? The Rebbe always, right? And he said it here a number of times already, right? The Friedrich Rebbe doesn't have a book called Lekutei Sichas. Only our Rebbe has a book called Lekutei Sichas. And the Rebbe said Lekutei Sichas and Nasi Dareinu. So one of the few times that the Rebbe ever mentioned himself as Rebbe in Tazrim, and it was dafka in the context of learning in Yonah Mashiach and Gula. I once mentioned this to someone who knows everything, and he said, no, there's one other time, Tafshin Mem something, the Rebbe once referred to himself as Nasi Dareinu. That was it. Like, he knows everything, this guy. So I asked him. What's really annoying is that he's 40 years old. You know, if you were 85 years old, then I'd feel fine. But he's 40 years old, and so then you feel like, well, when I'm his age, what am I going to know? Oh. Well, that's that. Anytime you ask him a question in something from the Rebbe, so he'll say, oh, well, it's actually in Lekutei Sichas Chelik Tesvav in the Haysafis in the back, the Sicha about. He knows everything that the Rebbe said, he knows exactly where you can find it, what it is and where you can find it. He's absolutely astounding. Something, a young guy, maybe he's 41, 42, something like that. I mean, he's known this since he was 25, but... Baruch Hashem, there's people out there who know something. Right? In a way in which it will be accepted, etzel kol echad ve'echad. Right? If you call that story about England. Right? Lefish sichlei v'avanase, in accordance with his intellect and his understanding. I mean, you have to be able to explain these ideas in a cogent way that people will understand. But one of the most important things about people understanding the idea that you're trying to talk about is that you believe the idea. Devar mayetzim min halev nichnasim lalev. Just reading the little notes here, right? That devar mayetzim min halev nichnasim lalev. That things that come from the heart enter the heart, right? So that one of the most important aspects of Beif and Miskabel is I'm talking to someone about a particular idea that I should also be living the idea. If I'm not living the idea, so then it's just a bunch of information. It's a nice shtickle Torah, but it doesn't mean anything. Al Yadei Limud in Yonah Mashiach Geula, through learning matters of Mashiach and Geula. That's why we have a little 2-minute thing after davening every day, but that's obviously not enough. A person should set aside time every week, if it's not every day, at least once or twice a week, to learn in Yonah Mashiach and Geula, to learn the Sichas, where the Rebbe talks about it like this Sicha, to learn the different in Yonim, learn the Rambam, Hilchos Mashiach, to learn about Mashiach. So Mashiach becomes something real, as opposed to some nice conceptual idea that when a person wants to make a joke and say that no one's going to come to the party, they'll say, well, they'll come when Mashiach comes. Right? Okay, nice joke, but that's... Al-Yadei Limud in Yonah Mashiach and Geula, Befrat Beifin Shel Chochma Bina and Das, particularly in a way the person can understand. The best way to do that is the Sichas Nun Aleph Nun Beis. The Sichas that the Rebbe said from around Pesach time, Tafshin Nun Aleph, through this time of year. Parshas Vayakel was the last Sicha we heard from the Rebbe. Veheyos Shazu Tafshin Nun Beis. It was maybe also it's not edited. It's not an edited Sicha because the Rebbe didn't get around to editing it because the Rebbe fell at the Kael on a Monday. But unbelievable Sicha. I mean, find it in Teres Menachem. The Sicha, you'll find it in some books, just a little shorthand of it. You'll find the whole Sicha. Unbelievable Sicha. Mostly about Ahavas Yisrael. The last Sicha the Rebbe talked to us about. And this is the Aved of this time. How they move, and it's understood. Since this is the Aved of this time, it's relevant to every single Jew. Bli yetzim in a klal, without any exception at all. So a woman who once went by the Rebbe in Dulles, there's a video. Went by the Rebbe in Dulles and said she has a hard time with Mitzvah Mashiach, and this is when the Rebbe started the Indian of Mitzvah Mashiach. And so she's having a hard time with it. Can she be potter from it? She does other mitzvahs. So the Rebbe said, no, you can't be potter from it. She said, well, what can I do? So the Rebbe said, so you can say an extra chapter of Tehillim every single day, and the only reason you're saying that chapter of Tehillim is to help bring Mashiach. That can be your part. Now, that was minimum. V'yiratzon should be the Eibishter's will. Excuse me. Shal yedei shekol shaliach, by virtue of the fact that every shaliach yamales tifkida b'shleimus, will fulfill his purpose, his job in a complete way. B'chol eser keiches hanefesh, with all 10 powers of his soul, his intellect and his emotions. U'befrat shekol hashluchim yisachtu v'yikansu b'zeh, and it's particularly all the shluchim should unite and enter into this. Yaviu tekefu miyad, they will bring immediately mamish as a gilui, the revelation of shleimus and the wholeness of shel hashaliach yikari v'amiti, the essential and true shaliach, who we learned earlier as Mashiach, yachad in gilui eser keiches shalei, including the revelation of his 10 powers. Shalachna biyad tishlach, hashaliach shebedareinu, the shaliach of our generation, kfei kedushas mericham yad menasi dareinu, ukefi shaya bedor shelefanav, and just like the door that was before him, shel kfei kedushas mericham yad mer nisached im aviv, as the Frierdiker Rebbe was one with his father, the Rebbe Rashab. Asher hu haya b'nei yechida, he was his only son. Kach sheyesh es hashleimus shel kol shivas knei hamanara, so there is now the wholeness of all 7 branches of the menorah, kol hasheva deres, all 7 generations. Now, the Rebbe left out a generation. He didn't mention that generation. His, right? The Frierdiker Rebbe is the 6th, right? But it is interesting, the Rebbe said the Frierdiker Rebbe is one with his father. Okay, so then who's the Rebbe? One with his father-in-law. V'oid v'ikr, me'acher shekvar simu, and the Rebbe said that beferish numerous times. Really early on in the Yechidus, in the Messias, in the Rebbe's Messias, the Rebbe was saying a Sichas, and one of the, not so many people there, and one of the Chassidim was crying. And he was obviously crying because he missed the Frierdiker Rebbe, and the Rebbe said to him, I saw this in print. And it says, "Mipi Shemim Bilvad." This is from the people who heard it, meaning it wasn't ever officially recognized, but the people who were there heard this and wrote it down. That the first year of the Rebbe's Messias, that someone was crying, and the Rebbe knew why he was crying. He was crying because he missed the Frierdiker Rebbe. The Frierdiker Rebbe's chassid, and the Rebbe said, "Why are you crying? It's the same. It's all exactly the same, only just more light." That was the Rebbe's response to him. Nothing changed. V'oid v'ikr, me'acher shekvar simu es avedus hashlichus. Now that we've finished avedus hashlichus, ba kol shaliach ela mishaleach amiti. Every shaliach comes to the mishaleach amiti, the true mishaleach. HaKadosh Baruch Hu u'moidia. I've done my shlichus. V'achshav higia zman, and now the time has come. She'ata you kaviyachol tasa shlichusecha. You should do your shlichus. Shegam HaKadosh Baruch Hu shaliach. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is also a shaliach. How do we know? Well, we say Magi Devar of Yaakov, that whatever HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us to do, he does. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu is also a shaliach. B'yachad im eser asfiras, and together with the eser asfiras, atzmus mahusei ba'atzmai, the atzmus of the Eibishter, kaviyachol hu Mashiach tzidkeinu. Shalachna biyad tishlach, shalach lanu es Mashiach tzidkeinu b'feil mamish. Right? Send us what your job is to send Mashiach, so send Mashiach. V'afilu im adayin yochel liyos safek, and even if there could still be a doubt, Shema HaKadosh Baruch Hu reitz l'hachzik yisod rega echad b'golos, that maybe HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to keep us one more moment in Golos. L'man gedel hanachas ruach, because of the great pleasure he gets, the great pleasure that our Aveda in Golos gives him, because he sees here we are in the dark and we're still serving God with all of our keiches. Zayah kol Yehudi, every Jew cries out, Kol ma she'yer melech ha'balabayis aseh, Maimer Chazal, that everything that a balabayis, everything that the owner of the house says to you, you have to do, chutz mitzeh, unless he tells you to leave. That you don't have to do. Kol ma she'bala bayis, zeh HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu can say, Omer, that he says, tzarich lasos, you have to do. Chutz mitzeh, except leave. What's that? Chutz mi lishaer oid rega chas v'shalom, except to stay one more moment, chas v'shalom, b'matzav shel tzei, in a situation of tzei, michutz lo shulchan aviyim, outside or away from the table of their father. Mevakshim v'tevim, kaviyachol mi HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They ask and plead, so to speak, claim from a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Shlach na b'yad tishlach. Send in the one you're going to send. B'shnas u'baschalotza yad tishlach. V'have kvar segula mitis v'shlema. Bring the gula mitis v'shlema already. V'yachadim ha'shlemas b'avedus ha'shlichus. In addition, with the completion of avedus ha'shlichus, b'siyum l'kutei Torah b'parshas bracha, which we learned earlier, right? That the whole story of Yitzchak and Rivka is taught at the end of Likutei Torah. In other words, it's the Sach HaKol of all of the Torah. It's the end of it all, the conclusion of it all. Yesh miyad shleimus nisuyim. There should be immediately the wholeness of this marriage. Shir Shirim Shel Yisrael v'Kutsha Brichu. Right, because what comes right after the end of Likutei Torah, after Zaysa Bracha, is Shir Shirim, story of the marriage of the Jewish people and the Kadosh Baruch Hu, which is Mashiach. Ubefrat al yedei shemekablim gamis ha'achlota tevel lilmed is called Sefer Torah or Likutei Torah. The Rabbi said this also to Zviyam Matzar, and he's saying it again now, that a person should take upon themselves the achlota to learn all of Sefer Torah or Likutei Torah, kol chalkeim ad siyuma, meaning every Shabbos learn a little bit, and if you do that, then sooner or later you end up finishing it. Shal yedei limud Torah b'inyanim elu, through the learning Torah in these things, memarim od Yisrael hamshacha b'fel, we hasten drawing down Mashiach. Ad loifen shenekevet t'sevet gever, till we get to the point that the feminine will surround the masculine. HaKadosh Baruch Hu atzmai meida kaviyochel Yisrael. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so to speak, is meida to the Jewish people, admits to the Jewish people, is, so to speak, thankful on a certain level, bottle to the Jewish people. L'chol Yehudi, l'chol Yehudim, al avedosam. He thanks them for their avodah. Afilu shehi lo yahaisa b'tachlis hashlemus, even though it wasn't absolutely whole, their avodah, it was lacking, as all of our avodah is. V'umelech is kol Yisrael, and he's going to bring all of the Jewish people Eretz HaKodesh, to the Holy Land, Yerushalayim, Yer HaKodesh, to Yerushalayim, the holy city, Lahar HaKodesh, to the holy mountain, LeBeis HaMikdash HaShlishi, to the third Beis HaMikdash, V'oid V'u'ikr, and the most important thing, Teka from Yad Mamish, should happen immediately. Okay. So you give me a couple of minutes, I'll go copy something, we'll start a new Sicha that people should review and think about and learn. And like I said, what Shlichas, this is it. Explain Shlichas B'Pnimius, what it is, the Yichud of Man Ban, what that means, which is really astounding. To be bottled to the Mishalech, but to still ultimately use your own characters to bring about the whatever Shlichas you have. And is there a way to stop this thing? I'm saying okay, I'll be back in a minute. I'll try to make some copies. Maybe I'll just copy the first page, and then tomorrow we'll make copies. Should have done this yesterday.
I only asked a question last night, and I forgot. Amazing detail.
You'll be here for Pesach? No? No?
Yeah.
Oh, you come back, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a total solar eclipse in Cleveland.
Really?
And April 8th.
Nice.
The only one. Depends how long I'll live, Bezos Hashem. But it's the only one in Cleveland in my lifetime. There is one eclipse, a total annular eclipse, which is slightly different. But you know I'm sure you know the difference.
Yes.
So it's what's it called? That's in 2096 or something. There's no other total solar. I mean, it's technically it's the type of total solar eclipse. So you know, I kind of want to see it. And my luck will be cloudy there anyway.
Yeah. Good chance.
I'll drive out of town. I'll drive along the narrow path of the eclipse out of town until I find a clear patch. I'm just gonna wait there.
happened to the doc?
Please go back.
Oh no, we lost him. Okay, this is a fairly serious undertaking. It's a very famous mimer. Rabbi's first Purim Mimer, Tafshin Yud Aleph. It's printed in Melukat Gimmel. It's the conscious Purim from Melukat Gimmel, which is Tafshin Yud Tes, as you can see. Deals with the same inyan that we dealt with in Vata Tetzava, Vekiblu hayehudim, but from a completely different perspective. And deals with the same question: how can it possibly be that the Matan Torah at Purim was greater than the Matan Torah at the time of Matan Torah? Kabbalah Torah was greater at the time of Purim. How can that be, and what does that mean? And the Rebbe is going to explain 3 different levels of mitzvahs, 3 different levels of Torah, and 3 different levels of the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. All within the context of the yichud of elyonim v'tachtenim, the unity of the upper realms and the lower realms. Vekiblu hayehudim asher yechalu lasos. And the Jews accepted that which they had begun to do. And we know, of course, that means that the Kabbalah Torah at the time of Purim was greater. And the Frierdiker Rebbe explains in his mimer with this Dibra Maskell, which of course is the same mimer that we learned in Vata Tetzava, Tafresh Pei Zayin, Purim Katan Tafresh Pei Zayin. And the Rebbe says, Yotze La'or Achshav, that came out and printed now. So that year, they printed that mimer as Kuntras Purim, as you can see in footnote 3, meaning Tafshin Yud Aleph, 1951. Shekiblu ma she'echalu b'zman Matan Torah, that they received that which they had begun to do at the time of Matan Torah. Dezeh she'amdu, that which they said Nasa v'nishma, they said Nasa v'nishma at Matan Torah, haisa rak ha'schola. That was only the beginning. Echalu lasos. Bimei Achashverosh, in the time of Achashverosh, B'zman Gezeres Haman, in the time of the decree of Haman, Haisa Kabbalah Vekiblu hayehudim. This is review because we saw that at great length in Vata Tetzava. Umedayik B'zeh, the Frierdiker Rebbe learns carefully, Shalachu Oro Davar Pela. This seems to be somewhat wondrous. Shari B'matan Torah, Hayu Yisor B'tachli Sa'ilui, same question that we asked in Vata Tetzava. At Matan Torah, the Jews were on the highest level imaginable. Hein begashmius, shayuaz b'mayim b'damatzav mishubach b'yesed b'inyan achedus, that they were in a very, very lofty level relative to freedom. Right, so that's gashmius. Hein beruchnius, obviously in ruchnius, shayuaz etzlam gilu elakus b'dargach inailis. I think I gave. Right, that they were on the highest level imaginable in ruchnius. Ubimei Achashverosh, in the time of Achashverosh, Hayisro B'tachlis Yerida, they were on the lowest level. The same question we asked in Vata Tetzava. Remember, same question. The Neisef LaHelim VeHesters B'chol Galus, that in addition to the general notion of concealment that exists in all times of Galus, V'asher HaChoshech Yichasa Aretz, and the darkness will cover the world. But Ribu Itzim Sumim, Ubimei Achashverosh, I'm right, that was right. But ribu tzimtzumim ve'elomis v'starim, through a tremendous amount of tzimtzumim and concealments. Hine az, not in addition to Golus in general, az bezman gezeres Haman, in the time of gezeres Haman, hayehudim ve'hester ad Yosef, the darkness was even greater. V'gam begashmius, and even in the state of Gashmius, hayu az b'shafel amatzah b'tachlis, they were in the lowest state imaginable. Right, and we'll talk about that later much later in the Maimar Yud, I believe. Much later in the Maimar, I was going to talk about the fact that mitzad their goof was hefker. Their goof was hefker because every single Jewish body was basically chayiv misa. They're completely of no value whatsoever because the decree was to kill every single Jewish body. So even mitzad gashmius, they were in the lowest place imaginable. Shaisa gezerah, the gezerah was lahashmid lar gelabe, was to destroy. It's called hayehudim, every single Jew, minar vad zogin, from youth until older, taf and nashim, the youngest, babies and women, b'yom echad, in one day. Va'afal pikein, nevertheless, somehow, b'zman Matan Torah, at the time of Matan Torah, kashayu yisor b'tachlis iluyun, on the highest level, haisa rak ha'schola. It was only the beginning. Echalu lasos. Ubezman Gezeres Haman, and at the time of Gezeres Haman, which is the lowest imaginable, Kashayu betachlis shiflis, and they're in the lowest level. As dafka kiblu masheichal b'matan Torah, they accepted that which they began in matan Torah. Same question, basically. Right? Now, if you look in footnote 5, the Rebbe mentioned something here which he did not mention about the Tetzava, which is interesting. It's footnote 4 or 5? 4, sorry, footnote 4. Right? In the second paragraph. First paragraph is all just marmakim. The second paragraph, laha'ir, to explain. Shabbatara or Sham, Ubamaimer Tafresh Pei Zayin. That's the Maimer we're learning for the Rebbe's Maimer, the Tchilosei. Shal Derech Shamer Chazal, it's similar to that which Chazal said in Gemara Shabbos, Alakosev on the Pasuk in Esther, Kimu Vekiblu Yehudim. Right now, we noticed this when we were learning about the Tetzava, and the Rebbe brought both psukim in Vata Tetzava. The Friedrich Rebbe brings the pasuk of Kiblu Mashechalu Bezman the Matan Torah. The pasuk of Kiblu Mashechalu Lasos. The Jews accepted that which they had begun to do. Chazal learned something very similar from the pasuk of Kimu v'Kiblu. They have established and accepted. So it should be, of course, accepted and established. They've performed and accepted. No, it should be accepted and performed. Right? Accepted and fulfilled. How can you fulfill before you accept? Okay, so Chazal say that they received, they fulfilled that which they had already received, and that was Matan Torah. So that's a very similar idea to the idea of they've received that which they began to receive at Matan Torah. Okay. So, but the Chazal used the words in the pasuk Kimu v'Kiblu hayehudim. Kimu mashe kiblu kfar. They fulfilled that which they had already accepted. Af shelachura hem shnei inyanim. Even though they seem to be two different things, that what? The kiblu yehudim esasher chalu. That the pasuk that the Friedrich Rebbe chooses, Vekiblu Yehudim esasher chalu, that the Jews accepted that which they'd only begun at Matan Torah, who sherak b'purim haisa Kabbalah. When was the Kabbalah Satara Purim? They accepted that which they had begun to do at Matan Torah. But where's the real acceptance? Purim. Whereas in the other pasuk, what does it say? They fulfilled that which they'd already accepted. When did they accept it? Matan Torah. So where was the acceptance? At Matan Torah. Mashein came. That's not the case. Kimu mashekiblu. They're now fulfilling that which they accepted. Who? That seems to indicate. Shigam b'Matan Torah. Also b'Matan Torah is a Kabbalah. There was a certain level of acceptance. Ella shaloi hayala kiyum, but there wasn't fulfillment. Vorei l'kamen sif yud beis. We'll see this later in the Maimer. The Rebbe will deal with this. Ubisharei Eira b'shnei mekemis v'alderech zeh b'reishti b'maskal zeh tafrei shayin ches and b'shab hu v'perish zeh atzmei b'shem Amar Razal. Okay, so that question, the question that the Rebbe asks here. So the Rebbe didn't ask that question about the Tetzava, but here in the footnote, the Rebbe does ask the question, and it'll be dealt with later on in the minor to a certain degree. Okay, but the question's out there. Okay, so again, we just asked basically the same question we asked in Vata Tetzava. How can it possibly be that the Kabbalah Torah at the time of Purim was greater than Matan Torah? We were on such a higher level at Matan Torah. That's the question, basic question. Last line, Muvar Bezeh. So of course the Friedrich Rebbe answers that question. What was the answer? Why was Purim greater than Matan Torah? We learned it in Vata Tetzava.
Because Mordechai got the entire Jewish people in
Serious
Nefesh, video. Serious Nefesh? What? 100%. That was the answer. Okay. Umavar Bezeh, Shebizmana Gezerah, at the time of the Gezerah, Yakim Torah Mitzvah Shelahem, their performance of Torah mitzvahs was b'Mesiras Nefesh. I've heard that before, right? Same. This is based on exactly the same mimer of the Friedrich Rebbe. You're going to see we're going to go in a completely different way, unrecognizable from. It's a different mimer, completely different mimer. Ulahar, to explain, Shabbatara or Mavur, that in Torah or, it's explained, and this is also brought in Vata Tetzava, that Mesiras Nefesh Elahem Haiso Az, the Mesiras Nefesh Haiso Az that they had then, he was If they were to deny their Yiddishkeit and become whatever the religion of the day was, they wouldn't die. Because it was a gezerah neged hayehudim. Interesting notes show up. If I look at a toaster now, I see that a toaster, I think of God, because a toaster isn't real and God is. Baruch Hashem. Einad Mavad. Ki gezerah haisa rak al Yehudim, because the gezerah was by the Yidden. And what is a Yehudi? Someone who believes in God, someone who doesn't deny God's existence. So that's who the gezerah was. It wasn't racial. It was philosophical, so to speak. I mean, if you adhere to a certain religious belief, so then you were chayev misa, and if you didn't, then you weren't chayev misa. But we know, again, we saw this vata tetzava. Yet no one had any external thoughts to actually do that. Umevayer, and he explained, Mesiras Nefesh Elamaisa, that their Mesiras Nefesh was Loirak Shelo Yichvor Chas V'Shalom. Not only did they not deny the Eibishter Chas V'Shalom, Ela Shemasu Nafsham Gamal Kiyam Torah Mitzvahs. They actually increased in Torah Mitzvahs and were Mesiras Nefesh for Torah Mitzvahs. And again, we saw that in Vata Tetzav. Va'ad, to such an extent, they got together in large groups of people and learned Torah of Mesiras Nefesh. They could have hidden away, right? But they didn't. They could have theoretically done nothing as long as they aren't Meimir Datim, as long as they don't exchange their belief system for something else. Yeah, but no, but they increased in Torah mitzvahs. And this arousal of Mesiras Nefesh was through the agency of Mordechai Yehudi. Sounds like a synopsis of Vata Tetzava. Well, it's not. It's a synopsis of Tafresh Pei Zayin, right? Because Vata Tetzava was based on the Frierdiker Rebbe's Maimer Tafresh Pei Zayin. And Torah, the Alter Rebbe. That he got people together to strengthen their emunah. This is something the Rebbe did not emphasize in Vata Tetzava. He mentions it, but didn't emphasize it. The Ikar Aveda of Mordechai was learning Torah with children. They're the foundation of the Jewish people. As is mentioned in the Maimer, in the Frierdiker Rebbe's Maimer, the greatness of the breath of the little Jewish child learning Torah. Now, it's interesting. In Vata Tetzava, that particular aspect of the whole story, the Rebbe doesn't talk about. He doesn't talk about, he mentions that he got people together, he mentions he got 24,000 children together, okay, but that basic idea of Tinukah Shel Beis Rabban, the Rebbe didn't mention. The Frierdiker Rebbe, at that point, was mentioning it constantly to the Chassidim, ad kedei kach that later there was another Farbrengen where the Rebbe, it wasn't the Farbrengen in Peterburg or on Purim Katan Tafresh Beis, and it was later. I think it was actually in Moscow on Purim, but I'm not 100% sure, where the Rebbe ripped open his shirt and bare his chest and said to the Chassidim, if this goof is burning, meaning if they, God forbid, take me and burn me, don't stop teaching the children. You have to teach the children. Don't ever stop teaching the children. And it's very, very interesting. When the Frierdiker Rebbe got to America, what's the first thing he did was open schools for kids. And it is also very interesting that if I never thought about it, but I was talking about someone, this came up in the context of this mimer, and someone was mentioning the fact, the Yidden who came from Europe, so what did they do? They built shuls and they built mikvahs. What didn't they do? They didn't build schools. I mean, they had schools for their kids, but I mean, the school, the Frierdiker Rebbe's whole Indian of America is nit anders, was all relative to the children's education. because the schools in Brooklyn, some of the frumest schools in Brooklyn had non-Jews teaching non-Jewish subjects part of the day. Things that just, today, no one would think of doing something like that. And obviously in Europe, they didn't do that. So when the Rebbe said, America's nicht anders, that was his focus, that the education of the children has to be the same. And focused tremendously on educating children, because the Rebbe said, you guys can stay frum all you like, your children aren't if you don't educate them properly. Children are going to leave. You guys can be Meiser Nefesh to build a new shul in Brooklyn, but if you don't have a school for your kids, so then, a serious school for your kids, so then it's going to last one generation. So the Frierdiker Rebbe started building schools, and a lot of it was, again, Tinok Shabbeis Rabban, based on this dagesh that's found in Kibul Yehudim, that the Rebbe does not talk about in Vatat Tetzaveh. That's not the emphasis in Vatat Tetzaveh. Let's try to finish the paragraph. Mordechai got together 22,000 Talmidim, v'limdem Torah b'mesiras nefesh, and he taught them Torah b'mesiras nefesh. Ad shekesher ba Haman Rasha, when Haman Rasha came, Mordechai Amar lehem, baruchu lechem, go, run away. That you won't be burnt by my coals. In other words, you won't be harmed by being around me, since he wants to harm me. Right? Amru, that what did the kids say to him? Imru itcho nachnu bein l'chaim bein l'mavis. Right? We're with you, whether or not for life or for death. Shekibla lehem kol einishia ach v'rak shaloi lihiparad min haTorah. They accepted upon, these are the kids, accepted upon themselves any punishment that might be, as long as they didn't have to separate from the Torah. V'zeh v'kiblu yudim asher chalu lasos. And that's the pshat that they accepted. Now that's the Medrash, so the famous Medrash, where Mordechai is incredibly happy, right? And Haman comes and can't figure out what he asks Mordechai, why are you so happy? So Mordechai says, because I know that there's a future for the Jewish people. Why? Well, because the kid said to Mordechai 3 psukim. One kid said, Al tira mipachat pisam mishes l'shem ki savai. Another kid said, Utza eitza v'sufa v'davar davar lo yokum ki imanu kel. And another kid said, Vad zikna nihu vad seva ani ezbel. They said the psukim that we used to have to daven, Al tira. They said those, it comes from that Medrash Chazal. They said that, and when they said that, so Mordechai knew that Jewish people were in good hands. Right, these kids. And this is the idea of accepting that which they had begun to do. Matan Torah is only the beginning of all this. But at the time of Gzeres Haman, by virtue of the fact that there was this Mesiras Nefesh B'Feil, Alter and Mitzvahs, Nisalu, they were elevated. Be'inyan echad, in this matter, and that's exactly what the Rebbe says. Be'inyan, in inyan zeh, the Rebbe says a number of times. Be'inyan zeh. All right. L'madrega nailus yesim yikamesha b'zman Matan Torah, to a higher level than it was at the time of Matan Torah. V'lochin az dafka is a Kabbalah. That's when there was Kabbalah Vekiblu Yehudim. Okay. So that's a review of Vatat Tetzaveh. An emphasis on the children that didn't exist in Vatat Tetzaveh, but that's basically the Inyan. Mesiras Nefesh. The Tzarech L'havin, the Rebbe will start to explain that. Okay? So now we're going to go in a completely different direction than we went in Vatat Tetzaveh. Completely different. We'll talk about tomorrow. Okay. Well done.